Yeah, recording is on, and now we will see float day 19, day 19th. So here we will talk about floats. We have seen yesterday we have completed the positions, and now we will talk about the float. What do you mean by float? I think I'm not sharing my screen. So when you say float, just a minute. So in CSS3, when you talk about the float, so how elements should be positioned? So here in CSS3, the float property is used to define how an element should be positioned within its contained element. The float property can take one of the following values. None. Then left, float right, float left, float right, and inherit. And what? Inherit. Now when you say none, it's a default value. The element will not float. This is the default value. When you say none, this is the default value. Let us see what do you mean by float first. If you don't apply any float, it is none. But let us see something different in the float. So here I can say FLT RT or index 01.html and app 01.css. Index 01.html, app 01.css. So here we can say float right. What do you mean by float right? Okay. So let's have h1 float right, h1 float right. Here we can have one paragraph. Let's understand, or here the element would be, when you say float right, the element would be floated to the right of the containing elements. The text and inline elements will wrap around the left side. So you will get to know what I mean to say exactly. Now we just have added this paragraph. One more paragraph we would be having lorem ipsum. One more time. Okay, something like this. We have some text we have written. And into this paragraph, this much is the text, and into the paragraph I can say image. Let's get some image from the internet, and here we can say So let's get this image. Android, let's place this image. I'm downloading it. Save image as Moonstack 19th day. Okay, and here we can say Android dot jpeg, Android dot jpeg. So here we can say img src android.jpeg alternate text. Here we can say this is Android logo. This is what? Android logo. Reveal it in Finder. Let me open it. So if you see, if I don't apply any float, by default image would be placed over here, and below a paragraph would be there. Can you see that? And can you see this white space is getting added unnecessarily? This white space is getting unnecessarily. So here is the image and you have a white space. We didn't apply float yet. We didn't apply what? Float yet. Now when you say float, so let's import the CSS, link rel CSS, app01.css, app01.css, and inside that, to the img tag, we need to say float right. Float what right? See now what's happening. So inside, so if you can see, there is a white space, but technically, can you see, image is this much. So white, this is the part of the image, but content would be placed at the left hand side and image would be placed at the right hand side. If you see, image and the content starts at the one line. See that? Now if you see this white space is not a part of the HTML. The white space is there itself in an image, right? Hello? So
yeah.
When you say float right, the particular thing you want to float to the right, that would be there, and rest of the content would available over here. Now if you don't want, just comment this out, and we can say div, and we can have a div, and I can say p.div, to that width 300 pixels, height 300 pixels, background color cadet blue, and float right. Refresh it. Okay, there is no content over here. Is it getting applied or not? 300 pixel width and height. We can say high. Okay, got it. So here we can say, just create a class and box class. Here is also p, that's why it is conflicting. Here we can say block box. Refresh it. Can you see? You have moved particular content to the right. Either you can take an example of image or any content you want to place to the right and left. You can add it in this way, float right. Similarly, we have float left. So I will keep this file separate, and for the float left I will create new file, index02.html and app02.css. Index01, let me copy this, float right, float left, app02.css, float left, exactly. So we have a box, inside that box we have hi, and we can say box float left, refresh it. Zero two. Can you see content over here and the container over here and the container over here? So P is the container. Remember that? If you read the document carefully, what do you mean by float left and other things? So when you say float left or float right, in CSS, the float property is used to define how an element should be positioned within its containing element. Very important thing. Within its containing element. Okay, let's try something else. Let's remove this paragraph and let's try to refresh it. See, box. Okay, in a 02 we have, here also in a 02 we have. Now if you remove this class box over here and refresh it, so hi would be there, and below that there would be this. Add the class box and simply remove the float left and see what happens. Can you see? If you remove the float left, see, content will start over here. If you say float left, see here, you have this image and the text content will jump from here to here. Text content will jump from here to here. How come? Because of this float kind of thing. Because of this float kind of thing. Okay. What if you make a float right? See, still it works. Still it works. No problem. Getting my point? Hello?
Yes, yeah. I would say by default, although it's mentioned as a none, but that's a left only, right? That is not explicitly mentioned, but it's left only, right?
No, no, no. If you see none, that is something different. This is not a float left. This is the natural positioning. H1, then paragraph, then div, and then paragraph.
Okay, if we'll put a left, the text will go up. The position will stay as is for high, and the lower end text will go up on the left hand side.
Correct. So when you say left, this text will jump over here. There is no white space over here.
Right.
That's what the float left. Okay. Now, when you say float, this is what about the float is. This is absolutely what about the float is. And when you say float none, that float none is nothing but what? Natural positioning. Okay. So float left, float right, float none. And about the inherit property, you know exactly what do you mean by that. Correct? What is inherit property?
It will inherit the data from parent.
Correct. Whenever we talk about the inherit property, you need to specify inheritable properties and non-inheritable properties. Whenever you talk about inherit keyword, unset keyword, you need to talk about there are two types of the properties: inheritable, naturally inheritable, and non-inheritable. Naturally inheritable means color, border, background are not inheritable properties, but you can inherit them explicitly. You can inherit them explicitly using which keyword? Inherit keyword. Correct? So that's why I'm removing this inherit now, because you know what do you mean by that. Is it clear?
Yes.
Now, when you apply the CSS property float left to an element, you are instructing that element to be floated to the left within its containing element. This means that element would be positioned on the left hand side of the container. Element would be positioned. This means that the element would be positioned on the left hand side of the container, and the text or the inline elements that come after it flow around on the right side. Right? So here is a breakdown how float left works. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's convert it to H2. Turn into H2. H2. This is H2. Just a minute. Float left. Float left. This is a normal. Float right. Okay, here is the breakdown for the float left. So here we can say element positioning, element positioning. So the element is taken out of the normal flow of the document. The element is taken out of the normal flow of the document. It is moved to the left edge of its containing element. It is moved to the left edge of its containing element. Text wrapping will happen. Text and inline elements. Text and inline elements that come after the floated element will flow around the right side. This creates the wrapping effect. This creates what? The wrapping effect. So similarly about float right. Similarly about the float right. Now something about this float you need to remember. It is important what happened to this. Just a minute. Okay, so what I wanted to tell is that so this floating is kind of little bit outdated. nowadays we don't use float kind of thing, right? We use something called as flexbox. We are going to see that shortly. Now let's write about the float right. When you apply the float right to an element, when you apply a CSS property float right to an element, you are instructing that element to be floated to the right within its containing element. This means that the element will be positioned on the right hand side of the container, and text or the inline elements that come after it will flow around the left side. So here is little breakdown for float right. First we can say element positioning. Same thing, element positioning. We will understand it by means of element positioning and text wrapping. The element is taken out of the normal flow of the document. The element is taken out of the normal flow of the document. It is moved to the right edge of its containing element. Then text wrapping, same like left only. Here you can say text and inline elements that come after the floated element will flow around it, and on the left side this creates the wrapping effect. This creates what? Wrapping effect. And another property, float none. Now what will happen in the float none? When you set float to none, okay, so here you can say when you set float to none, you are essentially saying that elements should not be floated. This is the default value. This is what? Default value of the property. Here what happens when you set float none? First, no floating will happen, and it's a normal flow. The element is not floated. Here you can say the element is not floated. It remains in the normal flow of the document, and another elements will not wrap around it. It remains in the normal flow of the document, and other elements will not wrap around it. The element normal flow, the element will be displayed in its normal position. The element will be displayed in its normal position in the document flow, and other elements will appear without any of the wrapping behavior, right? Now, important thing about the floating in general for all floats, left, right, none, inherit, whatever. Inherit is not the property by default given to you by float only. Inherit can be applied to a lot of other properties also. So it is important to note that while floating elements, floating elements was a common technique for creating a layouts in the past. This is very important. It is important to note that while floating elements was a common technique for creating layouts in the past. Modern CSS techniques such as the flexbox and grid are generally preferred for more complex layouts due to their greater flexibility and the ease of use. So here is one thing why we are learning the flexbox. See here, it's clearly noted on the official page itself. It is important to note that while floating elements was a common technique for creating layouts in the past, modern CSS layout techniques such as the flexbox and grid are generally preferred for more complex layouts due to their greater flexibility and what ease of use. Additionally, the use of floats can sometimes lead to the layout challenges and the clearing techniques. So here if you can see, well, you will not occur this scenario, but in the past we have done a lot of things to mitigate with these things. So additionally, the use of floats can sometimes lead to layout challenges and the clearing techniques like overflow auto. Clear fix in the example are often needed properly contain the floated elements. So floating so what you can say, floating happens, well this we didn't used actually, but floating happens, floating creates the problem in responsive designs also. In what? Responsive designs also. Hello?
Yes, yeah, you're right.
So when you say float, this is all about what floats are. So we have used the floats over here, and here is the output float left. So this is not a float left. Here we can say float left, like this.
So basically, as of now, I do not have the information example with respect to flex or grid, but I do know with respect to like float left, right, or inherit or none. So I can utilize, like in general, I can utilize. It shouldn't be like there is no harm using it, but we have better techniques, but we can utilize it, right?
Yeah, you can use it, but you need to write a lot of code to manage this on all the devices,
Okay. Okay.
on the mobile, on the tablet.
Mm-hmm.
So we are just talking about desktop right now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So we are not considering the mobile devices and other things. We will do that shortly. But this is about,
Okay. So these are better, I would say, these are available, but there are some limitations as you are saying. So better to use other ones, like
yes,
it will fit in different layouts, basically.
correct,
Okay, got it.
correct. So you will rarely use float in your coding. Maximum you would be using flex and grid, flexbox and the grid layout. Maximum, right? Now I will commit this much code over here, CSS3, and here we can say floats. CSS3 what? Floats. I have pushed the code. Okay. I have what? Push the code. Now if you go to our syllabus, things, floats we have covered. Layouts and responsive design is remaining. Layouts and what? Responsive design. So you can consider 1 week for layouts, and maximum of the responsive designs we are going to cover in the layouts only. So 1 week or more than that we will need for the layouts. For the responsive design, 2 to 3 days we would be needing, right? And transition animations in 1 session, max 2 sessions we can cover. And that's it about our CSS3, right? So here we will end the CSS3. But now I'm going to take a pause over here before moving ahead to the layouts and the responsive design. And I'm going to go back to HTML5. I'm going to go back to what? HTML5. So we have seen input types, if you remember this, right? If you remember this, input types we have seen. Just a minute, let me format the document. Input types, we have discussed about div. What do you mean by div? We have discussed. I will go back and we'll start something called as semantic tags. This part, HTML5. So far we didn't discuss about that. Now it's a correct time to start with those techniques or those things. What happened? Why it is not loading?
Yeah, it's still showing.
So you guys are reading this document, right?
Yeah, I started reading it and practicing it.
Yes, and you need to refer Mozilla also. So these are the notes, remember that. These are what? Notes. Official documentation is way extensive. So if you wanna go to the interview or something like that, before, or if you wanna type the code and then you need to refer something, then this document is good for you. And already I have given link to the official documentation. So this you will refer extensively for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, 3 things. Okay. Now in the HTML5, we need to talk about semantic tags. And in every HTML page, you might have seen something like this. This is related to now responsive design, right? So we have discussed that this represents the HTML5 document, doc type HTML. This line represents, this is the HTML5 document. Now this and this two, well, not this, but this is mostly, or this is absolutely required for HTML, responsive web pages. We will talk about this also. Now headers also we have discussed, H1 and other things. Lists, ordered list, unordered lists, that also we have discussed. Now what is HTML5? What is HTML5? This thing we need to talk about. So if you go to the official documentation, hypertext markup language, and and you will find the semantic tags. Something is not working on my system. I don't know what's happening. It might be due to the internet. Am I audible? Hello? Why it is showing me offline?
Yes,
Okay. So HTML5 semantic tags. HTML5 semantic tags. Yeah, new semantic elements. What do you mean by semantic tags? So let me go here. Day 19 and index 03 03.html and app 03.css. HTML5 and semantic tags. Semantic tags. Now I want to create a structure where I would be having a left menu, I would be having a main content, whiteboard. Okay, I think I am facing network problem. Yeah, so what I wanted to do, I want to do something like this. If this is the screen, right? So I want to,
so first thing, and so like, what is the difference between HTML which we used to use it, and as we are adding tags, so what is the difference between HTML5 and
yeah,
this, like?
you'll get to know. Whenever we
Okay,
do that thing, you will get to know.
okay,
Okay, so what I wanted to do, I want to create the left menu. Over here, there would be some items, categories. Okay, then I would be having a navigation bar. This would be the navigation bar. This would be the this would be the navigation bar, and this is the left menu. This is navigation bar, some company logo and name, and here your sign in or log out button, something like this. And this is your actual content, main content you would be having. And to company website, you might have some footer. You might have some footer, some important links, favorite links, FAQ, then contact details would be at the bottom. So I need to develop this thing, and I want to create the structure. So what I will do, for everything I will write a div. This is a header, right? Again I will have div. Again I will have div. Inside this again we will have div. A left menu. Again we will have a div. Main content. Then div footer. right? And you will apply some CSS which will create this kind of structure, correct? Header, left menu. To the left menu we have main content and there is a footer, correct? So you will design something like this, but this is not that meaningful. Everything is inside a div. For everything you are writing div, 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 which is bad practice. Now, whenever even Google search engines, they have crawlers. Whenever that crawlers come to the page, they will also not understand what's happening over here by looking at this, right? You agree or not, team? Do you agree with this or not? Header, left menu, main content, footer, right? Header, left menu, main content, footer. So this is how you can make this structure in the HTML4 or in earlier versions. You may use other tags also, but they don't give you that much understanding. Whenever you look at the code, you should get proper understanding of the code that you have written. By considering this, HTML5 came up with the idea of semantic tags. HTML have came up with the idea that the semantic tags. So when you talk about the semantic tags, let's go here, HTML5, and yeah, what is HTML5? HTML5 is the fifth iteration, a fundamental standard employed to structure and exhibit the content on the internet. It serves as the foundational technology for crafting and fashioning the website and the web applications. HTML5 evaluation was geared towards the augmenting the potentials of the web, facilitating the construction of the content that is notably more dynamic, interactive, and replicate the multimedia elements. Some key features and the improvements of the HTML5 includes the semantic elements. So what are the semantic elements? HTML5 introduced the several new semantic elements like header, nav, main, article, section, footer, right? So HTML5 introduced the several semantic elements that provide more meaningful structure to the web. Now let's remove this thing, and here we can say header, header, header. Now inside that there is something called as nav. So nav bar would be having a nav bar. Then main, here we can say main, and this would be having a side. Here we can say a side. Sidebar is nothing but what the aside. Sidebar is nothing but what aside. And then here you can say section or article. There are other tags also, section or the article. And here you will write something like this. Then here you can say footer. Now UI wise or the representation wise, there is no difference. As far as the representation is concerned, there is no difference. If you run this page and if you run earlier page, it would be same. But this is adding more meaning to this tag. It is adding more meaning to this tag and more meaning to this tag. How? So these tags are coming from HTML5. The tags which gives you meaning to your page are nothing but what the semantic tags are. So when you talk about the semantic tags, right? When you talk about the semantic tags, semantic elements are the tags that carry meaning about the structure and the content of the document, making it easier for both humans and machines to understand the purpose of the different parts of the page. So whenever crawler will come on this page, crawler will show you some crawler will show you or just a minute, or we can say Android, just a minute. Yeah, now let's go here and let me, yeah, can you see relatable mobile operating system? I just have searched Android Google. Can you see these phones, Android developers, Android Studio, Android 12, from where these things are coming? Crawler is going to this page and crawler is reading the page, right? And somewhere from here, some content from here, so crawler knows, okay, this is a nav bar. This is what nav bar. This is a menu. This is a menu. This is the menu. This is the menu. If you inspect this thing, can you see inside the nav? Inside the nav, you are getting all these things, and you are getting this result because of the positioning or usage of the correct HTML5 elements. So in the earlier case, we were not understanding what's happening. Everything is a div. That is also correct. No problem. But it will not give any meaning. If you want to do something meaningful, Google says, or web says that use the particular tags: header, main, footer. There are other tags also, like article is there,
Can you see this like on a HTML? Like you can open the.
Yeah, so you will not get any difference. Technically, you will not get any difference. It would be very similar to the earlier one, right? But when you add the layouts and other things, it has real meaning. Now, if you run it, is it running? 03. Header, left menu, main content, and the footer. If you go to the inspector, you will see that, can you see this is inside a body, there is a header, there is a main, there is a footer.
So, yeah, as of now, just like text are displaying as we haven't added anything in that.
Correct, we don't have anything. Even there are no CSS. But understanding is that hence from now, whenever you write the tags, that should be wrapped in semantic tags. What are the semantic tags? The tags which are giving some meaning. Tags which are giving some meaning to the page is nothing but what? The semantic tag. Semantic tags that carry a meaning about the structure and the content of the document, making it easier for both humans and machines to understand what's the purpose of this section. What is the purpose of this section? What is the purpose of this section?
When we generally create a HTML document, we have three things, right? HTML tag, the
Correct?
main tag.
Yeah.
In that one, we have head
Mm-hmm.
and the body, right?
Correct.
So it distinguishes those things. But here, if we go by the same way, basically it's all things will be in body here. I can see.
Correct.
So there will be like header for that one. There will be footer for that one, and the content goes into
Main tag. Correct.
Okay.
It is not necessary. You can skip this and go on writing div soup. In the web terms, web developers call it as div soup. Div inside div, div inside div, div inside div. Well, there is no meaning for that structure. But whenever crawler or bot is going to scan this page, and this might be shown from the headers only, whatever you see over here. Header nav section, this might be header nav section, right? Now what is there? Phones, Android developers. So it is picking up particular things from the page, particular content from the page, and it is showing in your search results over here. How? Google knows which tags to pick over here to show in this way, which tags to pick and which tags to, and what content to show on the search result page. That is all dependent on the HTML semantic tags. Search engine optimization techniques emphasize on using particular semantic tags for your particular content. So this is the interview type question. First question, what do you mean by semantic tags? So what would be your answer? What do you mean by semantic tags? Hello? How to define semantic tags? Just I explain. When you talk about the semantic tags, HTML5 introduced the several semantic elements that provide more meaningful structure to the web documents. Semantic elements are tags that carry meaning. Semantic elements are the tags that carry meaning about the structure and the content of the document, making it more easier for humans and machines. So this content is more interpretable by Google search engines, and to you also this comes with some meaning. So I can say that kindly change the menu in a nav bar. So you will directly go to this tag and you will change it. Clear?
Yes.
Any questions?
No, as of now. Are we gonna like create some sort of structure like?
Yeah,
this?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, we are going to create. But for that, you need to know Flexbox and grid layout. But before going to that part, few relatable tags are necessary to be created. Rest is same. Float can be added to this navbar. Overflow can be added to the main. Rest is same. There is no change. Absolutely no change. Everything is same. But this is more interpretable. Okay. HTML5 semantic tags. I have pushed the code as well, and I was about to cover this much content for today, and we will add some details on day after tomorrow. Tomorrow we would be having off.